And the Islamic Republic of the late Imam Khomeini will further gain and attain more and more dignity. And this is what has infuriated the enemy. Respected youth of ours, the great Iranian nation, what you see the enemy is doing is the sign of the enemy's agitation. It shows that they are infuriated. It doesn't show the enemy's power. What you see the enemy is doing against the Islamic Republic, it's not out of the enemy's power. It's because of the fact that the progress of the Islamic Republic, the magnanimity of the Islamic Republic, the resistance of the Iranian people, they have made the enemy freak out. This is what the enemy is concerned about. Now, as for the third topic, well, the way you recognize the enemies of Imam Ali, we can also learn lessons from that. The front standing against Imam Ali, you could see in the course of history, well, there were three groups standing against Imam. That means the Wasatin was one group. That means the one that were fundamentally inimical toward the Imam. And then we had the Arabic word Naqasin. That means the group that were actually followers, but not true followers of the Imam, who trampled upon their allegiance and moved toward the material world and those kinds of whims and wishes. And then we have the third group that's called Maraghin in Arabic. That means those who were unwise or they were ignorant, who well, in the name of Islam and following the Quran, they stood against the epitome of the Islam that was Imam Ali. These are the groups, the three groups standing against the Imam Ali. Well, the first group had fundamentally opposed the rule of Imam Ali, and then later on in history indicated that what they wanted to, how they wanted to replace. They were Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, Ubaydullah Ziyad, and Yusuf ibn Umar ibn Saghafi. These were the people who they had in their mind to replace Imam Ali and his justice-based system. That's what they were, the people those enemies wanted to rule instead of the Imam. Well, they want their own. The other group, they wanted their own share from the material world. They acted in a different way. And the third group also in their own way. Of course, those who did not comprehend the Islam correctly, they were called Maraghin. Their heads had some certain dealings with the enemy, and this is what history has shown regarding the other group called Khawarij. That's what's claimed to have existed. Now, as for the late Imam Khomeini, too, the very same three groups stood. We had there were three different groups standing against the late Imam Khomeini too. The U.S., the Zionist regime, their allies inside Iran, they were the Wasatin group that stood against the Imam. And they were those who had problems and issues with the principle of the Islamic rule and with the rule of a person like the late Imam Khomeini. They opposed it fundamentally, and they wanted a replacement for this. I mean, they still want that. And the people to replace them, they were Hajjaj ibn Yusuf that we have today. People like them. And we know what kind of people they are. On the other side, on the front against Imam, there were also those who broke their allegiance. They were those followers who were not standing as strong. And one should beware of these people. You know, this is the material, the desires. They could not stand against those desires. And then they turned the battlefront to do good. They turned it to a battle for power, and they sought power and material world. Now, among them, both at the time of Imam Ali, we had Talha and Zubair, for instance, and we had some less significant people among those groups. And you could see the same thing during the late Imam Khomeini's period. And the great Imam had this vast groups of people standing at the same front against him. He stood against them strongly. Those who were negligent, the other group, there were those who opposed the late Imam, the situation of the revolution of the people. They did not realize the situation correctly. They did not distinguish the enemy from friends. They did not come to comprehend the ways of enemy conspiracy. They got busy with insignificant things, and they could not identify the great move on the part of the late Imam. If you want to cite a number of instances, you could see that during our time, there were some groups like Daesh and the like, and in the early days of the revolution, there were some other groups like the MKO and the like, so whose leaders were traitors and their subordinates were negligent, and they were cheated into doing those things. So the enmity of these, the antagonists of these three groups, did not only belong to the late Imam. It's continued, and even today, the very same groups are standing against the Islamic establishment and the great legacy of the late Imam, that's the Islamic Republic. They're standing against the Islamic establishment, and the resistance on the part of the Islamic establishment has prevented their aggression. Of course, this mixed coalition front, they try their best to make disruptions in the workings of the Islamic establishment. They want to put this option to some trouble. They want to make the headway of the Iranian people. They want to slow it down. They want to make it harder, but they can never check the progress of the Iranian nation. So we should praise God. We live at a time when we saw a great man who shared certain characteristics and attributes with the commander of the faithful, the Shia Imam, the Imam Ali, peace be upon him, and the fruit of this dignity was left for the Iranian people. Now your minds and hearts are ready. Then the late Imam, the way he faced this, what paradigm did he follow? Very briefly, I want to talk to you about it. These are lessons for us. We need to take lessons from these. So there are a number of attributes in the behavioral pattern of the late Imam that I want to cite. In the first place, the Imam, when it came to antagonism, he was actively dealing with them. He never was passive. The Imam was never made passive. He never felt weak, nor did he show any sign of weakness. Powerfully and robustly, he stood against the enemies in a very active way. Secondly, he never panicked. He never made rash decisions. And when mishaps occurred, he was not overwhelmed with emotions. He did not rely on emotions that were devoid of wisdom and prudence. The decisions that the Imam made were brave and entwined with strong emotions, but on the basis of logical and wise calculations. Now, thirdly, Imam had priorities. He focused on priorities. Let's assume during the campaign days, the Imam's top priority was to fight against the Pahlavi rule, and he did not focus on sideline issues. During the imposed war period, Imam's priority was the war itself. When the Imam had said on several occasions that the war is the top priority, that the whole defense had the top priority, and that was a fact of the matter. He just focused on one prioritized issue. He didn't care about sideline issues. Now, in the early days of the revolution, in his manners and his approach, you could see in the very early days and early weeks after revolution, reliance on the constitution, the focus on establishing the Islamic establishment, the legal proceedings. That was what the Imam was focusing on. He concentrated on the main and pivotal point that needed to be dealt with. Now, the fourth point is that he relied on people's capabilities. The people of Iran, the late Imam, regarded to be a great nation that's informed, that's powerful and capable. He trusted the people. He was optimistic, and especially he was optimistic about the youth. You can see in his speeches, the Imam has always been very optimistic around the people, especially the youth. And the fifth point is that his lack of trust in the enemy, not even for a single moment in the 10 years period after the Islamic revolution, at the top of the Islamic establishment, did the Imam trust the enemy. Not even a single moment. He never cared about the proposals of the enemy. He did not care what the enemy's their moves, and he really considered the enemy as enemy. Now, the sixth point is that he cared about people's unity and solidarity. That was one of the characteristics that we need to learn from the Imam. Whatever would divide the people or put a wedge among the people's ranks, they were all negated by the Imam. The seventh point was his robust faith in the divine victory and the divine promise. That was also a pivotal point that the Imam relied on, that God will bring victory. He tried his best from the bottom of his heart. He did whatever he could on the battlefront, but he had pinned his hope on God's assistance and the divine victory, and that's what he relied on. So the late Imam had true beliefs And he believed that if you do something for the sake of God, you will never lose anything. If you do it for God, there is no kind of loss coming your way. You will either make progress or headway, or if you don't, you have just performed your duty or obligation and you feel proud. So let me tell you, dear brothers, sisters, the great Iranian nation, after the late Imam, we have followed on the path of the Imam, and we will continue to do so. The Imam will never feel weak and will never be passive. With the assistance of the Almighty God, we will stand against demands of the enemy and the bullying of the enemy. We will try not to be overwhelmed with emotions and make rash decisions, and we will get to the very important point, to the core, and will not deal with sideline issues. We will prioritize things with the assistance of God, and as we're guided by God, we'll identify and we'll locate the right path, and hopefully we will keep trusting the capabilities of the people, especially our youth. We'll have our full trust in them, and we will never have our trust in the enemy at all. Well, we will try to advise our people against division, and we do believe in a divine victory. We are confident, no doubt, that the people of Iran, with these emotions that we see among them, with this hope and faith, definitely our people will emerge as victorious. We also know what the enemy is thinking about. We know the enemy's scheme. We know very well, and we also unveil that to our people. Of course, our people already know so many things, and they feel what's going on. So today, the enemy's scheme is economic pressure, psychological pressure, and practical pressure. These are the three: economic, psychological, and practical pressure. This is the goal, the target of all the three, and the kind of pressures that the enemy apply is directed at dominating over our endeared country, Iran, the same way that they're dominating poor countries in our region. Well, the economic pressure is by placing sanctions, by preventing other countries from cooperating with us on economic spheres. That's the pressure that they're exerting. The result that they want to attain by this political pressure, if you please pay attention, they plan, by applying economic pressure and placing sanctions, is not to only pressure the government, not the establishment only. They want the Iranian people to be brought to their knees. That's what they desire to do. They say that the people of Iran should be frustrated so that the Islamic establishment will have to surrender to our bullying. That's what they're following. It's not only the people that they recognize, nor the Islamic establishment. Slogans that we won't compromise, with the U.S. will only fight America. Now, that's the goal of the economic pressure that I just mentioned, and with the assistance of the Almighty God, with His blessings, and on the back of the efforts by the authorities and people, they will be fruitless. But as for the psychological pressure, this is a really delicate point that you should bear in mind. There are points of strength of the Islamic establishment. The points of its strength that for both the people and the country are a source of power, and that they have identified those points, and in their propaganda they raise those points, they introduce those points as challenging aspects. It's because they want to discourage the Iranian people regarding those points. Now, let's assume that there is, for example, the nuclear achievements and development, which is a source of pride in the field of technology for our country. Nuclear development in the country has been a source of pride in the field of technology and technical know-how of the nation. It shows how talented our youths are. It's no insignificant thing. Maybe you remember the day when we required enriched uranium, 20% enriched uranium, in order to treat different kinds of diseases. We needed that. I mean, our 20% enriched uranium was going to get exhausted, so we needed to provide it in a way. So where could we provide that from? Then we had to go to countries like the U.S., European countries, and the like, and to provide them from them. Then there were a host of different issues that they raised on the obstructionism, a host of conditions and obstacles that they put in our way not to access that, because they realized that we needed that. When a nation needs something, when there's a vital need for a certain thing, then the conditions of the seller, they have to accept all the terms and conditions of the one who sells the service or product. So they wanted to jump at this situation, and they set certain conditions for us. So it took months. It took maybe more than a year at the negotiations and shuttles, and all of these took so long, for more than a year. They never stopped. They always just repeated their demands and their conditions. So the Islamic Republic trusted its own youth and asked them to do something. So our youths roll up their sleeves, and they managed, before their surprised eyes, to produce 20% enriched uranium inside the country. That's what our youth did, without having any idea from what's happening outside. That's what they were amazed at what our youth did. That's how things have been. The power of our scientists, our technocrats, our youth, the same scientists, the same youth are inside the country, they are present. It's made the enemy furious. This is a point of strength for this country. It's a point of strength for this country. It's a source of pride. It brings you credibility, and also in practice, it brings development and progress for the country. This is a point of strength at a national level, and their intense propaganda, they tried and changed this into a challenging point, in their words, and also a point of weakness. They said that the nuclear activity brings tension, it's challenging, and it's got no use. So the point of strength turned to a challenging point, in their words, because they want to take that strength away from you. That's one of the things, a psychological thing that they did. So this is purely psychological, which is fundamental and significant. The fact that a certain nation is discouraged and made pessimistic regarding its own great achievements. Now, another instance is the missile activity. Now, missiles, and the production of various missiles, and having missile power, that causes stability. It brings stability to the country. Now, our youth may not remember the very same city of Tehran was under the fire of the enemy. It was burning. Homes were destroyed. People got killed in the city of Tehran. Of the frontline cities like Desful, Ahvaz in the south of Iran, like Shush, and some other cities, you know, they were worse off. They were badly hit. And even some remote distances, the enemy missiles reached those distant cities and hit those cities. And we had no missiles or rockets. We had to just sit idle by and do nothing and watch. So today, our youth have been able to change the country into the first missile power in the region. The enemy knows if they hit one rocket, they will receive 10 of them. So missile brings you security, it brings power. You see, this is what the enemy is focusing on. They're working on the missile program. And unfortunately, a number of individuals inside the country, they join the enemy in chorus. They say, what's the use of this? Now, another point of the strength of ours is the issue of seeking international justice on the part of the Islamic Republic. This is a great thing for the Islamic Republic. The fact that the Islamic Republic supports the oppressed nations, that's a great thing. To be a supporter of the Palestinian people, that's great thing and brings you fame. The resistance against the Zionist regime, this is what the Islamic Republic of Iran has strengthened. Now, some elements under titles of Daesh, the Nusra Front, and other such terrorist groups, they created them. And in Iraq and in Syria, they started operating. Now, Iran supported the resistance forces in the region. This is seeking justice. This is going to the defense of the Palestinian people. This is defending the independence of regional countries. This is defending the territorial integrity of countries. And that's a point of strength. And this point of strength, they call it as Iran's intervention, and they have turned it to what they call a challenging point, and they make believe, and they introduce it that way, and they work on that. That's the situation we are facing these days. Well, there are elements inside the country are unfortunately doing their job. One day, they are out in the streets of Tehran on the occasion of the Quds Universal Day. That's the day to defend the Palestinians. They say neither Gaza nor Lebanon. This is the slogan they chanted. Those who contribute to the psychological war of the enemy inside the country, they are not honest people. They're mean. They should be ashamed. But today, there are again certain individuals who are planning to portray a deficient form of the JCPOA. They want to impose this. That's what the foreign countries are trying to do. And some people inside the country are propagating to say, if this doesn't happen, then there will be war. No, that's a lie. That's only propaganda in favor of the enemy. Telling their leader that we are prepared to take orders. Now, we know what the enemy's goal is, what goal it's pursuing. The enemy wants us to do away with our points of strength. The elements that bring us national pride, the enemy wants to dispense with those elements so that the enemy could more easily dominate our country, our destiny, our fate, our future. That's what the enemy fancies in its mind. Well, the people that have stood against this. This is the psychological pressure. Now, as for the practical pressure, I should only have one statement to make and addressing our people across the country. This practical pressure is the fact that they try to stir the situation in the country. This is what they're planning to do. Definitely. Of course, they will face a dead end, as it has been so far. Now, the enemy wants to take advantage of the people's demands. Maybe in one part of the country, they have certain demands and they get together, or maybe they just sit in, maybe they have certain demands. There are some workers and laborers, maybe, but they have certain demands regarding their jobs, or some people in a town, they have some problem with the city. So the enemy has certain plans and schemes on those occasions, and there are some people who have penetrated among our people's rank. There are a very limited number of those mean people and treacherous people who penetrate these societies and communities so that the peaceful gatherings and meetings turn into an anti-security move. And they try to create havoc and cause unrest, so that in this way the Islamic establishment could lose its fame. This is what the people across the nation should be aware of. This is the scheme of the enemy. They have sat down and drawn these schemes. We know about these. We are informed. They have planned for this. And in my opinion, maybe let's say they deeply, firmly believe that they are wrong, and our people, when it comes to what they have planned for in their schemes and plots, people will strongly and wisely stand against all of those schemes. And I advise that our dear people, the same way they have remained vigilant, I recommend that they stay vigilant, so that people's, the people's attention, the people's presence on the scene is really of the essence. The Quds Day is around the corner. Friday is the Universal Quds Day. People's presence in the world will be observed by the world with the blessing of God. The Quds Day this year, despite the fact that people are fasting, it's hot and it's difficult, but on any other, like any other Quds Day in the previous years, this will be, even with the blessing of God, a much more significant Quds Day will be held this year. Well, I just mentioned the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. Let me also talk about that briefly. There are certain statements and comments made by a number of European countries. Well, you can infer that they expect the Iranian people to both suffer the sanctions and deal with the sanctions and get along with them, and do away with its missile program, which is definitely a requirement in the future of this country. And they want the people to continue with the same restrictions that are imposed. Well, I would tell those countries that they should be aware that this is a dream not come true. The people of Iran, the government of Iran, will never tolerate this, to both suffer from sanctions, to be under sanctions, and also to have some limitations on the missile program. This will never happen. The Atomic Energy Organization is duty-bound to quickly make necessary preparations in order to have 190,000 Su within the JCPOA for now, For now, we are acting within the JCPOA, so the Atomic Rights Initiative should make necessary preparations to move in that direction. And there are some also preparations that the respected president has already issued necessary orders. They should have started as of tomorrow. Also, a few statements for Arab youth. I would like to address them in Arabic.
الشباب الغيار العرب في خاتمة حديثي هذا وأقول لهم إن شعوبكم اليوم تعقد الأمل عليكم أنتم أيها الشباب إن شعوبكم اليوم تعقد الأمل عليكم أنتم أيها الشباب أعدوا أنفسكم لغد تنعم فيه بلدانكم بالحرية والتقدم والاستقلال.
Translate whatever I understand from the Arabic being addressed to Arab youth. Well, he advises that the Arab youth should stand against America and not to be afraid of the usurping Zionist regime.
كل ذلك قد جعل من بعض الحكومات العربية.
Well, there's a number of Arab states that are inimical toward your states.
كل ذلك قد جعل من بعض الحكومات العربية.
There are certain Arab countries that are acting just like the countries that are your enemies, and you youngsters and you youth, you bear this responsibility to understand the situation and to render it ineffective. So I invite you, all the Indian youth, that take action and initiative in your hands. So you should take action and initiative. You should be determined to do things on your own. The future belongs to you if you work today and start working toward it today. So if you start acting, then you will achieve things in the future. You should not be afraid of the greatness and dignity of the world of paganism, and as God has promised, and this is what the God has promised you in the Holy Book, that if you want, if you are vigilant and open your eyes, you will be able to return the conspiracies of the enemies to the enemy back. So it's the Friday, next Friday is the Universal Day of Quds, on which we should go to the defense of the resistance Palestinian people. That's the way, that's the path that we should be moving on. So I wish you all success and assistance from God on this clear path and straight path, and peace and blessing.
There you have it, as a powerful speech by the leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah